The scent of ambition, sweat, and something faintly antiseptic, perhaps a blend of herbal essential oils and cleaning products, hit Rebecca Johnson the moment she pushed open the heavy glass door of Master Kim's martial arts academy. Her worn-out sneakers let out a soft, almost shy squeak against the highly polished floor, a sound that always felt oddly out of place amidst the determined sounds of the dojo. Every week, this ritual of picking up her daughter Maya brought with it a strange, comforting familiarity mixed with a subtle sense of anticipation. It was more than just a pickup. It was stepping into a world that had profoundly shaped her once shy daughter. The main training hall stretched out before her, bathed in the stark, cold white lights spilling down from rows of fluorescent fixtures overhead. This harsh illumination clearly defined the expansive blue mats, where dozens of students, ranging in age from young children to teenagers, diligently drilled endless combinations of kicks and punches. Sharp, commanding voices echoed from the instructor's corner, cutting through the rhythmic thud of bare feet, striking the floor, and the ragged breaths of students exhaling after each powerful strike. It was a symphony of disciplined effort. Rebecca's eyes, accustomed to scanning the room, quickly found her daughter, Maya, in the far corner. At 16, Maya was completely immersed in a complex sequence of martial arts techniques, her movements fluid and purposeful alongside a few other students. Her face was serious, concentration etched into her features, but her eyes, Rebecca noticed, were bright with an undeniable passion. Watching Maya's dedication, the way she moved with newfound confidence, brought an affectionate, soft smile to Rebecca's lips. This martial arts journey had truly transformed her daughter into someone far more confident and assertive than the timid girl she once was. "Mom!" Maya's cheerful voice cut through the ambient sounds of the dojo as she noticed her mother's arrival. Her cheeks were flushed from the exertion, a healthy glow from her intense practice, but her grin was as radiant and infectious as ever. Rebecca waved back, her gentle smile highlighting her own down-to-earth nature. At 38, Rebecca wore no makeup, her dark curls, already streaked with early silver, pulled back into a simple, practical ponytail. Dressed in a faded gray t-shirt and old sweatpants, she easily blended into the quiet crowd of parents lining the walls, observing their children. "Take your time, sweetheart," Rebecca called out, her voice soft but clear, waving Maya back to her practice. She then settled onto a wooden bench along the wall, pulling out her phone. She checked her work emails, but her attention kept drifting, her gaze constantly flicking up to watch her daughter. Every powerful kick, every focused stance was a testament to Maya's growth. Suddenly, a sharp, authoritative command from across the hall pulled Rebecca's full attention. Her eyes landed on Tyler Griffin, who was guiding a group of more advanced students. He cut an imposing figure, tall, muscular, and impeccably dressed in a pristine white GI, cinched tightly with a gleaming black belt. Pride and an air of unquestionable authority seemed to radiate from his entire being. Yet, Rebecca, with her keen eye for subtle details, also noticed something else, a flicker of impatience, sharp and undeniable, whenever his gaze fell upon the students of color who struggled, even momentarily, to execute the more complex moves. "Kick higher, Jackson. Am I running a preschool here?" Tyler barked, his tone laced with mocking derision. A few embarrassed, hesitant laughs rippled through the students standing beside him, quickly dying down as Rebecca saw the unmistakable flash of hurt cross the young black boy's face. Jackson bowed his head, shoulders slumping almost imperceptibly, but he pressed on with the drill, his earlier enthusiasm clearly deflated. Rebecca frowned, a knot of discomfort tightening in her chest. She had witnessed Tyler's subtle bias before. It wasn't overt racism, no harsh slurs, but his tone, the way his gaze lingered, the barely perceptible shift in his body language, and the distinct manner in which he treated certain students left no doubt in her mind. Her own daughter, she knew, had likely endured similar slights. White parents, perhaps, might shrug it off, dismissing it as tough coaching. But Rebecca felt the sting of injustice keenly, almost as if it were directed at her. A nearby parent leaned towards another, whispering conspiratorially, "Coach Griffin is tough, but his students earned their belts faster than anywhere else." The other parent replied, her voice low and tinged with hesitation, "Maybe so, but my kid came home complaining he always gets singled out compared to the white students." Rebecca listened silently, her heart tightening even further. She knew prejudice ran deep in the world around her, a pervasive undercurrent, but each time she saw it firsthand, felt its impact, it felt like a fresh wound, raw and painful. Maya never complained explicitly, but Rebecca knew her daughter had silently endured similar slights many times over. She looked back at Tyler, a strange, quiet resolve beginning to solidify in her mind. At some point, she wouldn't just sit by and watch this quiet discrimination. She would have to confront it directly, unapologetically. But for now, she was merely here to pick up Maya, and she refused to let this sour her evening. "Mama, I'm done." Maya's cheerful voice, a welcome interruption, cut through Rebecca's troubled thoughts. Maya strode over, sweat beading on her forehead, but her smile was as bright and undiminished as ever. "Great job, sweetie," Rebecca said warmly, reaching out to gently brush a damp strand of hair from Maya's face, her touch conveying silent approval and love. "Let's head home. I'll make your favorite tonight." Maya threw her arms around her mother's arm, completely oblivious to the glance Tyler cast at them. It was a look of sneering disdain, a faint, mocking smile playing on his lips, almost a challenge. Although Rebecca didn't turn back to explicitly meet his gaze, she felt that look as if it were a dare, a gauntlet thrown. Taking a deep, fortifying breath, she resolved not to let anyone undermine her or her daughter's self-worth. Yet, as she led Maya out of the dojo, a sense of foreboding settled over her. She had no idea that a very different kind of match, one of dignity and justice, awaited her just beyond those doors. Even as they stepped out of the dojo, Rebecca could still feel Tyler's icy gaze tracking her and Maya like a predator's eyes. She risked a quick sideways glance at her daughter. Maya's eyes were still bright, innocent, as if she hadn't registered the subtle microaggressions that had just transpired, the undercurrent of disdain. Rebecca exhaled softly, reminding herself, as she often did, to stay strong. She knew all too well the injustice Maya was unknowingly up against, the silent battles that young black children often faced. The next day, after work, Rebecca decided to arrive at the academy earlier than usual. She chose a discreet seat in the corner, a spot that allowed her to quietly observe her daughter's class without drawing attention to herself. Rebecca wanted to get a better sense of what was truly happening in the dojo, to gather undeniable evidence, especially regarding how Tyler treated the students of color. She risked a quick sideways glance at her daughter. Maya's eyes were still bright, innocent, as if she hadn't registered the subtle microaggressions that had just transpired, the undercurrent of disdain. Rebecca exhaled softly, reminding herself, as she often did, to stay strong. She knew all too well the injustice Maya was unknowingly up against, the silent battles that young black children often faced. The next day, after work, Rebecca decided to arrive at the academy earlier than usual. She chose a discreet seat in the corner, a spot that allowed her to quietly observe her daughter's class without drawing attention to herself. Rebecca wanted to get a better sense of what was truly happening in the dojo, to gather undeniable evidence, especially regarding how Tyler treated the students of color. The class kicked off with its usual vibrant energy. The rhythmic sound of kicks cutting through the air and determined shouts reverberated through the room, a testament to the discipline being instilled. But amid the excitement and disciplined movements, Rebecca quickly noticed something was off, a discordant note in the harmony. In the center of the expansive blue mats, Tyler Griffin, clad in his crisp white GI and gleaming black belt, paced with an almost predatory grace among the students. His cold eyes scanned the young faces before him, searching for imperfections, for targets. "Jackson, how many times do I have to tell you?" Do that kick again, right now, or stand there until the sun sets. Tyler's voice, sharp and cutting, sliced through the air, his glare fixed on a small black boy whose shoulders visibly shook under the immense pressure. Jackson's face flushed with shame, a dark blush rising from his neck. But he persisted, repeating the difficult move over and over, desperate to comply. Then, Rebecca saw Tyler's favoritism laid bare, stark, and undeniable. Right beside Jackson stood Evan, a white student, attempting the very same kick, but with far less finesse, his movements clumsy and unrefined. Yet, Tyler casually patted Evan on the shoulder, his voice softening considerably as he murmured, "It's okay, Evan. Take your time, you'll get it." A surge of indignation, hot and fierce, rose in Rebecca's chest. The blatant unfairness was infuriating. Around her, the other parents whispered among themselves, a low hum of commentary. The white mothers seated nearby seemed unbothered, almost oblivious to the blatant double standard. In fact, some even nodded approvingly at Tyler's tough love approach, seemingly caring only that their own children were praised and encouraged, completely unaware or uncaring of the humiliation being heaped on others. Meanwhile, in another corner, a few parents of color sat silently, their faces taut with worry and a simmering anger. Rebecca recognized Marissa, Jackson's mother. The heartbreak on Marissa's face was unmistakable as she watched her son being publicly scolded, his spirit visibly wilting. Yet, Marissa remained silent, perhaps like Rebecca, unwilling to draw attention or disrupt her child's training, caught in the painful bind of self-preservation. "Enough, Maya. What was that? You expect a test for your green belt next month with moves like that." Tyler's sudden shout made Rebecca startle, her attention snapping toward her own daughter. Maya stood frozen, eyes wide, stunned by the harsh reprimand from an instructor she had worked so diligently to impress. Disappointment, sharp and clear, flashed across her young face, but she summoned her courage, nodded, and tried the kick again, her movements now hesitant. Rebecca felt her heart tighten, physically aching as she watched Maya's expression shift from vibrant enthusiasm to profound sadness in an instant. She knew how diligently her daughter had trained, how much effort she poured into proving herself. Yet to Tyler, it seemed no amount of effort from Maya or any student of color would ever be enough. The whispers among the parents persisted, a low murmur of approval for Tyler's methods. "Coach Tyler is strict, but that's how you get good fast, right?" one parent murmured. "If everyone's coddled, how do you separate the talented from the rest?" Each comment, delivered with such casual thoughtlessness, felt like a knife to Rebecca's heart. She clenched her hand into a small fist, hidden beneath her jacket, her knuckles white with suppressed rage. Observing Tyler's blatant bias, she knew this wasn't mere discipline. This was an ugly, deep-seated prejudice he never even bothered to completely hide. "Come on, Maya, stop wasting everyone's time." Tyler snapped, his patience worn thin, his voice dripping with contempt. Rebecca felt herself physically rising, an instinctual urge to step forward and defend her daughter, to shield her from the verbal assault. But reason held her back. She reminded herself that Maya needed to learn to handle pressure, that she needed to be stronger in the face of people like Tyler, to develop resilience. Still, a fierce conviction solidified within her. Rebecca knew she couldn't stay silent if this injustice went on any longer. When class finally ended, Maya quietly gathered her gear, her usual spark and vivacity dimmed, replaced by a quiet dejection. Rebecca stepped forward and gently wrapped her arms around her daughter's shoulders. She said nothing. No words of comfort were needed, but her embrace radiated boundless love and strength, a silent fortress to fortify Maya's bruised spirit. Before they left, Rebecca caught Tyler's eye one more time. In that brief, charged moment, she saw pure contempt and unadulterated disdain flicker in his cold gaze. He smirked, almost imperceptibly, as though daring her to do something about it, to challenge his authority. Rebecca met his glance with calm, unwavering resolve, her own eyes showing not a hint of fear. She vowed then, a silent, powerful promise to herself, that she would take decisive action, not just for Maya, but for every innocent child forced to endure such unfairness day after day, for every spirit needlessly crushed by a biased hand. And this time, she knew with absolute certainty she would never choose to remain silent again. The next practice session held a weight heavier than usual for Rebecca and Maya. What normally felt like familiar, almost routine footsteps echoing through the dojo now felt tentative and tense. Although Maya said nothing aloud, her pensive face and quiet demeanor spoke volumes. Rebecca knew all too well that Tyler's harsh criticism from yesterday still lingered, a bitter echo in her daughter's heart. "Don't worry too much, sweetie. Just do your best," Rebecca whispered gently, offering a silent squeeze of Maya's hand, a small anchor of encouragement. But even as she offered comfort, Rebecca couldn't shake the deep unease that Tyler's unfair behavior had stirred within her. Today's dojo atmosphere felt palpably different. Students weren't scattered in drills. Instead, they formed a large, expectant circle around the central mat. Parents, too, stood or sat around its perimeter, their faces a curious mix of anticipation and a vague sense of confusion. In the very center, bathed in the same cold fluorescent light, stood Tyler Griffin. His crisp white GI, a stark contrast to his polished black belt, seemed to amplify his presence. Every proud, arrogant gesture, every measured word, radiated an almost self-congratulatory confidence. "Hello, everyone," Tyler's cold voice echoed, amplified, through the hall, commanding immediate attention. "Today, I want to do something a little unusual. We're going to put on a short demonstration to clearly show you the difference between a professional martial artist like me and the amateurs out there." He paused, allowing his words to hang in the air, scanning the circle of faces with a calculating gaze. His eyes finally settled squarely on Rebecca, and a mocking smile of pride curled his lips. He pointed a dramatic finger directly at her, his tone dripping with an almost theatrical disdain. "And I think we've got the perfect volunteer. Miss Johnson, Maya's mother, always so devoted to bringing her daughter here. But I'm guessing she's never thrown a punch in her life, right?" A few students, caught off guard, snickered nervously, but their laughs quickly died when they saw the calm, serious expression on Rebecca's face. The dojo, sensing the shift, instantly fell into an oppressive silence. Maya stood beside her mother, her cheeks flushed bright red with embarrassment, her small hand trembling visibly as she gripped Rebecca's sleeve. "Mom, please," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible, thick with worry and a plea for her mother not to engage. Tyler took a few steps closer, his mocking edge sharpened, reveling in the discomfort he was causing. "Don't worry so much, Maya. I promise I'll go easy on your mother. I'll show her and all of you exactly why martial arts isn't for just anyone, especially people like her." Rebecca narrowed her eyes, fully aware of the insidious prejudice laced within his seemingly casual words. Anger flared within her, a hot, rebellious flame, but she forced herself to remain calm and measured, to keep her composure. "Mr. Griffin, I don't think this is necessary," Rebecca stated, her voice steady despite the tremor of her anger. "I'm just here to pick up my daughter, not to perform." Tyler laughed harshly, a grating, derisive sound, glancing around at the students and parents as if he'd just heard the world's funniest joke, inviting them to share in his amusement. "Oh, of course, Miss Johnson. How could I inconvenience someone so busy like you?" he taunted, leaning in slightly. "But I thought it would be interesting for my students to see what real skill looks like." A few white parents chuckled and nodded in agreement, completely oblivious to his underlying cruelty, caught up in the spectacle. Across the room, parents of color sat silently, their faces dark with frustration and a quiet despair, but none dared speak up, fearing repercussions. Rebecca felt the pitying and curious stares burning into her, a collective weight of expectation and judgment. Her heart ached at the humiliation and helplessness she saw reflected in Maya's wide eyes. But in that moment, something shifted irrevocably within her. She knew, with absolute clarity, that she could no longer remain silent while such flagrant injustice played out in front of her daughter and all these young students who, by their presence, looked to Tyler's behavior as an example, as a standard. She took a deep, fortifying breath, lifted her chin, and met Tyler's gaze with unwavering, defiant resolve. Her voice rang out, clear and firm, cutting through the murmurs and the nervous tension. "All right, if you want to prove something, I won't back down. But you should also prepare yourself to realize that not everyone is as weak and helpless as you seem to think." A stunned, absolute silence fell over the dojo. Students and parents alike stared at Rebecca, the quiet woman they had all assumed was timid and unassuming, unable to believe she had dared to challenge Tyler Griffin so directly. Tyler paused, his smug smile faltering for a fraction of a second. Then he burst into another loud, arrogant laugh. But behind his bravado, Rebecca saw it. A flicker of discomfort, a silent, almost imperceptible challenge in his eyes. "Oh, really, Miss Johnson? I hope you know what you're getting into. You wouldn't want to embarrass yourself and your daughter any further, would you?" Rebecca held his gaze with steady strength, showing not a hint of fear. She turned slightly to Maya, laying a reassuring hand on her daughter's shoulder, a silent promise. "Don't worry, sweetie. Mommy knows what she's doing." Looking into her mother's eyes, Maya, despite her lingering worry, drew on that invisible well of courage that always seemed to emanate from Rebecca, and nodded, a small, trusting gesture. Tyler then turned back to the circle, a self-satisfied grin plastered on his face, regaining his theatrical persona. His voice boomed out, confident yet cold, reveling in the audience's attention. "All right, everyone, get ready for a show you won't forget. After today, you'll all understand where true martial prowess lies and why amateurs will always remain amateurs." Rebecca squeezed Maya's hand, a quiet fire of pride and determination igniting in her heart. Though the physical match hadn't started yet, the real fight, the battle for dignity and justice, had been underway for a very long time. A dense, tense hush fell over the dojo after Tyler's provocative announcement. All eyes were fixed, almost morbidly, on Rebecca and Maya, as if waiting for some grand theatrical display to begin. Rebecca stood perfectly still, her posture straight and surprisingly rigid, her dark brown eyes locked onto Tyler's face without the slightest tremor. Her unexpected calm momentarily unsettled him, a crack in his smug facade, but the familiar arrogant smile soon returned to his lips, a mask of confidence. "Miss Johnson, what's this? Change your mind so fast." Tyler stepped a little closer, his tone dripping with mocking sarcasm, attempting to provoke a reaction. "Or have you suddenly realized that facing reality is harder than whatever fantasies you had in your head?" A few white students nearby couldn't suppress nervous giggles, small, uncomfortable sounds. In stark contrast, the students of color fell silent, their anxious, uneasy gazes fixed on Rebecca and Maya, a silent plea for her to succeed. Maya clutched her mother's sleeve, her little heart pounding with a mixture of confusion and fear, clinging to her last bastion of safety. Seeing her daughter's distress, Rebecca gently placed a hand on Maya's shoulder, stroking it reassuringly, a silent message of strength. Then, she took a deliberate step forward, her eyes calm but resolute as she faced Tyler, unwavering in her stance. "Mr. Griffin, if you want to hold a match like this, I don't mind. But I have one condition." Tyler raised an eyebrow, a half-smile playing on his lips, as if he'd just heard the world's funniest joke, amused by her audacity. "A condition? I'm intrigued. Go ahead, what kind of condition could someone like you possibly propose?" Rebecca ignored his condescension, letting his words wash over her without impact. She drew in a deep breath and spoke softly, yet clearly enough for every parent and student in the room to hear, her voice carrying an unexpected weight. "If you win, I will admit that I know nothing about martial arts, just as you say. But if you lose," Rebecca emphasized each word, her gaze sharpening, becoming challengingly direct, You must apologize publicly in front of every parent and student here for your disrespectful and racist behavior over all this time." Her words hung in the air, heavy and impactful, and the dojo fell into complete, shocked silence. The white parents standing near Tyler exchanged looks of shock and distinct displeasure, their expressions indicating disapproval of her boldness. A few shook their heads, apparently unable to believe that a quiet woman like Rebecca would dare make such a demand of a renowned, revered instructor like Tyler Griffin. Meanwhile, the parents of color began to exchange glances filled with admiration and a burgeoning sense of hope. At last, someone had the courage to stand up to give voice to the injustice they and their children had silently endured for so long. Tyler froze for a long moment, his confident facade cracking. Then he burst into a mocking laugh, loud and sharp, his cold eyes drilling into Rebecca as if she'd just told the most absurd story in the world. "Apologize?" he sneered, his voice laced with disbelief. "Are you really under the impression you can beat me? You're serious?" Rebecca's expression didn't waver. She remained calm, completely unfazed by his taunts, her resolve unshaken. "Yes, if you're truly that confident in your abilities, this condition shouldn't be a problem, should it?" Discomfort flickered, almost imperceptibly, in Tyler's eyes, a fleeting moment of doubt. But he quickly regained his smug composure, unwilling to show weakness. He threw his arms wide toward the spectators, adopting a pose of condescending confidence. "Fine, I accept your condition. If I lose, which of course won't happen, I will apologize to everyone here, although I have no idea what I'd be apologizing for since I've done nothing wrong. But Miss Johnson, you should prepare yourself, because you'll certainly need that apology when this match is over." At his words, some white parents immediately voiced their approval, chuckling and nodding in confident anticipation of Tyler's easy, predictable victory. A few parents of color exchanged worried looks, their faces etched with concern, silently hoping Rebecca really knew what she was doing, even as many still doubted her. Maya stood close to her mother, her small face etched with tension, her breath hitched. She whispered in a shaky voice, "Are you sure, Mom? You don't have to do this." Rebecca knelt to meet her daughter's gaze, speaking softly yet firmly, her voice a balm of strength. "Sometimes we can't back down, sweetheart. I'll be okay, and I know I'm doing the right thing." Maya studied her mother's unwavering eyes and felt that invisible strength she always admired, that silent power. She gave a small nod, her racing heart calming just a bit, despite her lingering worries. Tyler then strode to the center of the circle and addressed everyone, his face alight with an almost manic confidence. "The match will take place right here, tomorrow. Make sure you all come to see it. I guarantee it will be the most unforgettable demonstration you've ever witnessed." Rebecca heard every word, though she remained outwardly composed, her posture unyielding. Inside, however, a righteous fire of determination and deeply suppressed anger blazed within her. She knew this fight wasn't just a personal contest, a public spectacle. It was a battle for dignity and for justice, a reckoning long overdue. And this time, she was absolutely certain she would not fail. That evening, after coming home, Rebecca sat alone by the living room window, her eyes contemplative as she gazed out at the small street, slowly being swallowed by the encroaching darkness. The familiar sounds of the city at night, distant sirens, the hum of traffic, the occasional laughter, now seemed like distant echoes, merging into the endless stream of her thoughts. Maya had been fast asleep for hours, her breathing soft and even, and this was the moment Rebecca finally gave herself permission to confront the memories she'd buried so long ago, to lift the lid on her past. Tyler's taunting words still echoed sharply in her mind, each sneer, each mocking glance cutting into Rebecca's pride like a razor's edge. But what wounded her most wasn't his insult itself. It was the painful recollections Tyler had unintentionally unearthed, pulling them from that shadowy chapter of her past she had worked so hard to forget, to obliterate. It had been ages, an eternity, since she'd thought about the name Silent Storm, the moniker that once sent shock waves through the entire MMA world. Back then, she was known as Rebecca Storm Williams, the young black fighter who'd claimed the MMA World Championship 3 times in a row, a legend in her own time. In the ring, she was famous for her calm, cold, but ruthlessly precise style. Opponents admitted that whenever Rebecca stepped onto the mat, the air around them seemed to freeze, an almost tangible chill crushing their spirit before the first bell even rang. But now, all that glory felt like a distant story, a chapter she'd purposefully closed like a book she had sealed forever, locked away in a forgotten vault of her memory. Rebecca closed her eyes, took a deep, shuddering breath, and fought to suppress the overwhelming flood of emotions rising within her, threatening to overwhelm her carefully constructed composure. The last image she held of her glorious past wasn't the deafening roar of the crowd or the satisfying weight of the championship belt around her waist. It was a fateful, tears-soaked night of tragedy. It was a freezing, rain-lashed evening, the night before the most important fight of her career, the one the entire MMA world had been holding its breath to witness, the pinnacle of her achievements. That night, her younger brother, Marcus Williams, the biggest fan she ever had called her before the fight, his voice brimming with excitement. "I'm on my way, sis. I'll cheer you on like always. Don't worry, you're winning this one for sure." She could still hear the pure, unadulterated excitement in Marcus's voice, the last call he ever made, the final words she would ever hear from him. But that night, Marcus never arrived. A catastrophic car accident on the slick, rain-swept road stole her brother's life forever, a cruel twist of fate. When Rebecca learned the news, the fight hadn't even begun, the roar of the crowd still hours away. She collapsed in the locker room, her strength and will evaporating in an instant, replaced by a devastating emptiness. She refused to step into the ring, refused any condolences, any attempts at comfort. All she felt was an infinite emptiness and a guilt that would never fade, a heavy shroud draped over her soul. After Marcus's funeral, Rebecca, heartbroken and weary, announced her retirement, quitting MMA for good. Despite desperate pleas from colleagues, coaches, and even devoted fans, she couldn't bear the sight of another ring, the place that held too many painful memories, a constant reminder of what she had lost, a place she couldn't escape. Rebecca left her old city, a place now haunted by grief, changed her surname from Williams to Johnson, and moved to a new place, determined to start over from zero, to build a completely new life. She never revealed her true identity to anyone, living in anonymity, shedding her past like an old skin. She just wanted to live like an ordinary woman, a single mother devoted to protecting Maya from any hurt from the dark, brutal past she herself had endured. But now, Tyler Griffin had unwittingly awoken a part of her she'd long avoided, a sleeping giant. Rebecca opened her eyes, resolve hardened in her gaze, replacing the earlier contemplation. She knew she couldn't hide any longer, not just for her own pride, which was a small thing compared to the larger cause, but for Maya and for every other student of color who'd endured injustice and scorn, just as she once had. Rebecca rose slowly, her movements deliberate, walked to her wardrobe, and opened the bottom drawer. Nestled beneath layers of worn clothing lay her old silver and black MMA championship belt and faded photographs, haunting reminders of a past that was both glorious and devastating. She lifted the belt, its cold metal surprisingly heavy, her fingertips tracing each scratch and scar, each mark a testament to those brutal battles fought years ago. Memories of Marcus surged back, but this time, instead of drowning in sorrow, Rebecca felt a new fire ignite within her, a fierce, protective flame. "Marcus, I'm sorry I ran away for so long," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly with raw emotion and newfound determination. "But I promise you this time I won't back down. I'll fight for you, for Maya, for the justice we both believed in." Rebecca slid the belt back into the drawer and closed it with a soft but definitive finality. Her eyes had completely transformed, no longer the gaze of a subdued, silent woman, but of a true warrior, Silent Storm. The quiet storm of old had returned, resurrected, this time to demand the justice and respect she and others like her deserved to right the wrongs. Rebecca knew that tomorrow's match against Tyler wasn't just a personal battle, a public spectacle. It was the most important fight of her life, one for justice, for honor, and for the cherished memory of her beloved brother. And this time, she was absolutely certain she would not fail. The next afternoon, the late sun streamed through the large windows of Master Kim's martial arts academy, draping a thin, ethereal veil of light over the training floor. Today's atmosphere was unlike any other. A palpable tension hummed in the air. Every corner of the room was packed with students and parents, pressed shoulder to shoulder, their eyes brimming with a mixture of raw curiosity and breathless anticipation. All focus was on the center of the mat where Tyler Griffin stood, poised and ready for what he was sure would be an overwhelming, decisive victory. Rebecca stepped onto the mat with a calm, almost serene composure. She was clad in her usual loose t-shirt and simple sweatpants, a stark contrast to Tyler's pristine uniform. She swept her dark, curly hair back into a neat ponytail at her nape, her face betraying no hint of nerves, an almost unnerving placidity. A deep hush fell over the crowd, a collective holding of breath, as everyone watched the woman they all assumed was about to enter the most unbalanced, mismatched fight of her life. Tyler fixed her with a cold, mocking stare, allowing a smug, self-satisfied grin to spread across his face. The black belt instructor strode to the center of the ring and raised his hand, a dramatic gesture signaling for absolute silence. "Welcome, everyone, to this special match," he announced, his voice clear and resonant, echoing through the now silent hall. "As promised, I'll show you all the clear difference between a professional martial artist and an ordinary person with zero fight training." He swept his gaze over the audience, a wave of pride radiating from his confident smile, basking in the attention. "Miss Johnson," Tyler called out, his tone dripping with condescension, "are you ready, or do you need a last-minute change of heart?" Rebecca met his challenge with a steady, unflinching nod, her eyes sharp and focused, but unyielding. She said nothing, her silence a powerful statement in itself, simply affirming she was ready. Tyler shrugged theatrically, turning back to the crowd with a playful smirk, enjoying his role as the confident showman. "All right, since you're sure, let's get started. I promise to be gentle, so you won't get hurt. I'm a gentleman, after all." A few white students tittered, their nervous giggles sending uncomfortable ripples through Rebecca, but she remained motionless, perfectly poised and ready, a statue of calm. Without hesitation, Tyler slipped into a classic defensive stance and launched into a series of high, showy kicks, each one stopping just inches from Rebecca's body. He was deliberately flaunting his control, his precision, his supposed superiority. A smattering of applause, mostly from the white students and parents, rose in response, while pitying and mocking glances were cast toward Rebecca, as if they already assumed she'd made a grave, foolish mistake accepting the challenge. "See," Tyler boomed, following each flourish with a confident, almost triumphant declaration. "Miss Johnson here clearly has no martial arts skill. I hope after today she and all of you understands what true discipline training really looks like." Maya stood at the very edge of the mat, her heart hammering in her chest, tiny hands clenched together so tightly her knuckles were white. She stared at her mother, a wave of fear flooding her eyes, despite Rebecca's earlier encouragement to trust in her. Rebecca, however, remained unmoved by Tyler's arrogant display, his theatrical posturing. She simply shifted her weight, making minuscule, almost imperceptible steps, doing just enough movement to keep herself completely safe from his attacks, never moving more than necessary. Her calm precision visibly frustrated Tyler. His triumphant grin faded, replaced by a flash of irritation, then annoyance. He realized Rebecca's unruffled composure was an unspoken challenge, a silent dare, as if she was daring him to actually land a hit. "Aren't you going to fight back?" he snapped, his voice edged with impatience, delivering a sharper kick that whipped past her shoulder this time, with genuine force rather than mere showmanship. Still quiet, Rebecca's dark gaze never wavered from his face, her eyes locked onto his. Finally, her voice rang out, calm but unmistakably laced with subtle defiance, a quiet taunt. "I thought this was supposed to be a professional's demonstration. I'm just waiting for you to show me everything you've got." Her words drew gasps from those nearby, murmurs rippling through the crowd. Anger flared in Tyler's eyes. He couldn't believe this unassuming woman, with no apparent fighting pedigree, dared to taunt him, to challenge his authority, in front of everyone. He stepped back, inhaled a deep breath, attempting to regain his composure, to suppress the rising fury. He refused to lose his cool in front of the audience, to give her that satisfaction, but his ingrained arrogance made it impossible to tolerate Rebecca's serene, yet subtly mocking stare. "Miss Johnson, if you're that confident, maybe I don't need to hold back anymore," he growled, aggression igniting in his eyes, a dangerous spark. His next flurry of strikes came faster, harder, each one intended to break her defenses, to force a reaction, a stumble. But Rebecca flowed through every attack, evading with graceful, razor-sharp precision, each move barely inches away from the tip of his foot or fist. The parents and students began to sense something unusual, a shift in the expected narrative. At first, they assumed her effortless dodges were merely lucky, accidental. But now, as the pattern continued, they realized each evasion was executed with astonishing, almost supernatural accuracy. The more Tyler attacked, the more enraged he became, his breathing growing ragged, his carefully constructed composure fraying. He couldn't understand why this ordinary woman, seemingly untrained, could remain so composed and precise against his every blow, his honed techniques. What infuriated him most was her unshakable calm, as though all the techniques he'd honed over years of dedicated practice were nothing more than child's play to her. "You think dodging forever will make you win?" Tyler snarled through clenched teeth, his voice thick with frustration, verging on desperation. Rebecca didn't answer verbally. She simply held his gaze, an icy calm in her eyes, a silent challenge. But inside, she knew it was time to teach him, and everyone watching, a profound lesson. This wasn't just another sparring match. It was the reckoning for his arrogance and deeply ingrained prejudice, a long-awaited justice. The dojo felt thick with tension, an almost suffocating silence. Tyler, now completely out of patience, his self-control gone, unleashed a barrage of fierce kicks and punches, no longer holding back the showmanship of earlier. His strikes carried raw anger and spite, aimed directly at Rebecca, as if he wanted to shatter the infuriating calm on her face, to break her composure. Rebecca remained rooted in place, but something fundamental had shifted within her. She was no longer the frail, ordinary woman everyone assumed would be easily defeated. Every subtle movement and evasion she made was impossibly precise and fluid, a dance of anticipation, as if she'd predicted each attack long before it came. Tyler threw a powerful straight punch at her, a forceful blow, but in an instant, she dipped gracefully aside, the back of his fist whistling past her shoulder by mere inches, a hair's breadth. The spectators held their breath, a collective gasp, at her effortless yet exact reaction. Tyler immediately followed with a lightning-quick roundhouse kick, but again Rebecca glided back a single step, perfectly timed, letting his foot slice harmlessly through empty air. The dojo's atmosphere changed in a heartbeat. The mocking whispers and nervous snickers had fallen silent, replaced by astonished, confused murmurs from both students and parents. "What on earth is happening?" a nearby white parent whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief as she watched Rebecca's unbelievable display. How could she do that? Across the mat, Marissa Jackson's mother, long accustomed to seeing her son bullied and singled out by Tyler, couldn't hide her awe. She murmured, loud enough for others to hear, a profound realization. My goodness, she's nothing like we thought. Rebecca continued to dodge Tyler's furious assaults flawlessly, moving with an impossible grace, yet never rushing or panicking. Each tiny sidestep, each subtle lean or duck, was timed to perfection, causing Tyler's most devastating strikes to miss by a hair's breadth. Tyler's confidence crumbled, dissolving into pure frustration. He grew visibly flustered, his breathing quickening, his face reddening with anger and a growing sense of desperation. His eyes burned with bewilderment and rage. He could not fathom how an ordinary woman like Rebecca could so effortlessly evade his strongest, most precise techniques, his years of training seemingly useless. "What game are you playing at, Rebecca?" Tyler barked, his voice sharp with raw fury, his composure finally breaking. "Are you just going to dodge forever? Are you afraid to face me?" Rebecca offered no verbal reply. She simply stared back at him, her eyes colder and more authoritative than ever before, a chilling intensity. It was the same gaze that once made the world's top MMA fighters tremble with fear, the look that signaled their impending defeat. It was the look of silent storm, the silent tempest, returned after years of slumber, awakened by injustice. Rebecca knew exactly what she was doing. Each evasion wasn't merely defense. It was a clear, unspoken message to Tyler and to everyone watching, that arrogance and contempt are never true strength, only hollow imitations. At the edge of the mat, Maya's eyes were wide with wonder as she watched her mother's astonishing display. She could hardly believe the gentle, composed woman she knew was now showing such remarkable martial skill, such hidden prowess. Maya's heartbeat quickened, not with fear, but with an overwhelming sense of pride and unwavering belief in her mother. "I can't believe it. She must have some training," another parent exclaimed, astonishment and skepticism mingling in their voice. Nobody could move like that without serious practice. A few students of color near Maya broke into relieved, excited smiles. For the first time, they saw Tyler, their unfair instructor, brought to a state of confusion and undeniable discomfort, his superiority shattered. Sensing the crowd shift, sensing their loyalty waver, Tyler grew even more frantic, his movements becoming wild. He surged forward with even greater speed and power, throwing strikes so fierce that missing his target threw him off balance, leaving him stumbling and vulnerable. He realized that his own uncontrolled anger had made his once perfect technique sloppy and inaccurate. Rebecca stood her ground, unruffled, as though Tyler's furious blows were nothing more than meaningless wind, harmlessly passing by. She still had not thrown a single counterattack, yet her silent, icy composure was enough to send shivers through everyone in the dojo, a cold, undeniable power. Across the room, the spectators' gazes were transforming, shifting profoundly. No longer pitying or mocking Rebecca, they now watched with a growing curiosity, profound amazement, and deep, burgeoning respect. Even those who had previously cheered for Tyler, the loyalists, fell silent, following each of Rebecca's flawless movements with bewildered admiration. Rebecca recognized the profound change in the atmosphere and the audience's perception, but she knew this was only the beginning. She would stay patient and composed, maintaining her silent control, until Tyler and everyone else understood what she had long known. That true strength never lies in arrogance and contempt, but in humility, unwavering resolve, and the refusal to back down under any pressure. The dojo's atmosphere was electric with tension, a silence so thick it felt like a taut string ready to snap at any moment. Tyler, now utterly out of patience and self-control, unleashed a relentless barrage of kicks and punches, his movements devoid of any gentle showmanship. His strikes brimmed with raw anger and desperation, each one aimed to shatter the infuriating calm on Rebecca's face, to finally elicit a reaction. Rebecca remained perfectly still, but something fundamental had shifted within her presence. She was no longer the frail, ordinary woman everyone assumed would be easily defeated. she was a force of nature. Every subtle dodge and lean she made was executed with uncanny precision and grace, as if she'd anticipated each blow before it even left his body, a perfect fluid dance. Tyler launched a powerful straight punch at her, a fierce, driving blow. Yet, in a heartbeat, she slipped gracefully aside, his fist grazing past her shoulder by mere inches, a breath away from impact. The onlookers gasped at her effortless, exact reaction, a collective sound of wonder. Immediately, Tyler followed with a lightning-fast roundhouse kick, a blur of motion, but Rebecca simply took one measured step back, precisely timed, letting his foot slice harmlessly through the empty air. The crowd's mood flipped in an instant, a collective epiphany. The earlier snickers and mocking whispers fell silent, replaced by odd murmurs of confusion and a growing sense of awe from both students and parents. "What's going on?" whispered a white parent nearby, her eyes wide with disbelief as she watched Rebecca's incredible display. "How can she do that?" Across the mat, Marissa Jackson's mother, long used to seeing her son bullied by Tyler, couldn't hide her profound admiration. "Goodness," she murmured softly, loud enough for others to hear, her voice filled with wonder. "She's nothing like we thought." Rebecca continued to evade Tyler's furious assault flawlessly, moving with serene control rather than panic. Each tiny sidestep, each head dip was executed at exactly the right moment, sending his most powerful techniques whistling past empty space, never making contact. Tyler's confidence crumbled completely. He grew visibly flustered, breathing raggedly, his face flushed scarlet with anger and deep frustration. His eyes blazed with disbelief, unable to comprehend the impossible. How could a seemingly ordinary woman so effortlessly dodge his finest, deadliest moves? He fumed internally. "What game are you playing, Rebecca?" he snarled, his voice thick with raw rage, losing all pretense of composure. "Are you just going to keep dodging like a coward? Are you afraid to face me?" Rebecca offered no reply, no verbal acknowledgement of his taunts. She simply fixed him with a steely, unblinking stare, an impenetrable gaze. It was the same look that once froze the world's top MMA fighters in their tracks, a look that promised inevitable defeat. It was the gaze of silent storm, the silent tempest, returned at last to claim what was hers. She knew exactly what she was doing. Each precise evasion wasn't just defense. It was a clear message to Tyler and everyone watching. Arrogance and contempt are never true strength, only a facade. At the edge of the ring, the students of color exchanged hopeful, supportive glances. At first tentative, their encouragement grew, a ripple of quiet solidarity. A few even clapped softly, their quiet applause a powerful show of support that Rebecca could feel even over the mounting tension. Sensing their shift in loyalty, Tyler's fury deepened, a venomous current. He paused, scanning the crowd with a venomous glare, searching for the source of the defiance. "Who clapped just now?" he barked, his voice sharp with accusation. "You all enjoy cheering for weakness. Or do you just like seeing me embarrassed?" No one answered him directly, but Tyler's gaze flicked to those defiant faces, and he felt deeply insulted, his pride wounded. Turning back to Rebecca, his features twisted in pure rage, a mask of uncontrolled fury, he hissed through clenched teeth, "I'm done holding back, Rebecca. I'll make you regret ever challenging me." Rebecca didn't flinch or show any fear. She simply met his glare with the same unshakable calm that had unnerved him all along, a bedrock of serenity. "Go ahead," she said softly, her voice composed yet brimming with an undeniable strength that defied her quiet demeanor. "But don't forget the conditions we agreed on." Her reminder was like pouring gasoline on a fire, igniting Tyler's last vestiges of control. He lost all restraint, charging in with more ferocious punches and kicks than ever before, a wild, uncontrolled assault. Yet in his blind rage, his technique faltered, becoming sloppy and overreaching. Rebecca easily slipped every attack with the smallest, most precise movements, leaving him off balance and stumbling, a puppet on broken strings. The dojo's tension peaked. No one dared breathe too loudly. All eyes fixed on Rebecca with a potent mix of shock, profound admiration, and growing respect. It dawned on them. She hadn't thrown a single counterpunch yet, but she completely controlled the match in a way no one could explain, a mastery beyond visible effort. Tyler's panic mounted, a cold wave of despair washing over him. He panted heavily, sweat beading on his forehead, while desperation and raw fury blazing in his eyes. He couldn't fathom why an unassuming woman like Rebecca could so utterly dominate him, a master black belt, without even a single offensive move. Rebecca sensed he'd hit his breaking point, that his control had completely dissolved. She knew it was time to end the match, not with violence, but with her unyielding calm, her dignity, and her unwavering resolve. Her goal was clear: to show everyone there that true strength never lies in arrogance or contempt, but in humility, and that justice always prevails, no matter how fierce the struggle. She inhaled slowly, steadily herself for the final, decisive move she knew would forever change Tyler's, and everyone else's, understanding of real power. Sensing that Tyler's loss of control had reached its peak, Rebecca knew the decisive moment of the match was at hand. She stood perfectly still in the dojo, tall and proud, her gaze calm, yet resolute, as if she'd known the outcome all along, a silent prophecy. Her astonishing composure stood in stark contrast to the chaos raging inside Tyler, a storm of fury and humiliation. Tyler paused, breathing heavily, his face flushed crimson with anger and humiliation, as though he might explode, consumed by his own rage. He straightened up, fists clenched, his entire body trembling with uncontrollable fury. His eyes locked onto Rebecca, filled with a primal hostility and bitter resentment. All of his usual pride and confidence had evaporated, replaced by blind fury and a desperate, primal need to prove he was still the strongest and unequivocally in the right. "I'm ending this right now," Tyler roared, his voice echoing menacingly throughout the dojo, a final desperate roar. Without hesitation, he charged at Rebecca with overwhelming speed and power, unleashing his signature spinning kick. The technique he was most proud of, the one that had made previous opponents yield instantly, a move he considered his ultimate weapon. He delivered the kick with all the might and last-ditch desperation he could muster, and the air in the dojo seemed to freeze as every eye tracked his movement, a collective anticipation. Rebecca watched Tyler's motion with pinpoint accuracy. She saw the clumsiness, the complete loss of control, and the desperation in his decisive strike. She knew that his anger had forced him to commit the most fundamental error in martial arts, losing his inner calm and balance, becoming predictable. Just as the powerful kick was about to strike her, a mere fraction of an inch from impact, Rebecca moved. For the very first time since the match began, she launched a counter. Though it was not the fierce strike Tyler expected, no powerful punch or kick. Instead, she simply leaned gracefully aside with absolute precision and, in one fluid, almost imperceptible motion, extended her hand to gently touch the incoming leg. The swift, feather-like gesture seemed almost harmless, impossibly light, but it instantly shattered Tyler's balance, throwing him completely off kilter. He stumbled in midair, spun awkwardly, and crashed hard onto the mat, leaving everyone in stunned, disbelieving silence. Silence, thick and absolute, blanketed the dojo. No breathing, no whispers, nothing but wide-eyed shock as every spectator struggled to process what they'd just witnessed. An impossible feat. Tyler lay motionless for a few seconds, his eyes wide with horror and confusion, trying to comprehend his sudden, inexplicable defeat. He couldn't fathom what had happened. A moment ago he'd been certain of his victory, and now he lay defeated by a single, effortless move from the woman he'd always underestimated, dismissed as insignificant. The students and parents around exchanged looks of utter astonishment, as if witnessing a miracle, an impossibility made real. Those who had once banked on Tyler's absolute dominance now stood speechless, unable to form a single coherent word, their expectations completely shattered. The students of color, including Maya, froze before slowly, gloriously recognizing the extraordinary feat they had just witnessed. In their hearts swelled joy, relief, and immense pride, a silent cheer erupting. Their admiration for Rebecca deepened into profound respect and gratitude, a new hero forged before their eyes. Tyler propped himself up on one hand, trembling not from pain, but from the searing humiliation that consumed him. He scanned the room and met astonished, questioning stares that only magnified his shame, making it unbearable. "No, this can't be," he stammered, his voice choked with panic, a desperate plea for reality to reassert itself. He couldn't accept that the small, ordinary woman he had so derided had bested him with such grace, such effortless power. Rebecca approached him calmly, her stride measured and unwavering, a figure of quiet authority. Looking down at him with cool, knowing eyes, she spoke softly yet firmly, her voice carrying an undeniable weight. "Tyler, I hope you now understand that true strength isn't about flashy technique, physical power, or arrogance. True strength lies in humility, respect for others, and the mastery of oneself." Tyler fell silent, his face pale and his gaze hollow, drained of all color and confidence. He dared not meet Rebecca's eyes, for inside him burned a shameful awareness of his utter, undeniable defeat, a realization that cut him to his core. Then, from the crowd, a gentle applause began, tentative at first, a ripple, then swelling into a triumphant roar that filled the dojo, shaking the very walls. They applauded Rebecca, not only for winning the match, but for teaching everyone a vital, profound lesson in courage, conviction, and justice. Rebecca turned to see Maya standing, tears of pride and deep emotion shining in her eyes, a radiant display of her love and admiration. Rebecca offered her daughter a soft, reassuring smile, letting her know that everything would be all right, and that she would always be strong enough to protect Maya and anyone else facing injustice or prejudice in their lives. The dojo remained engulfed in an impossible silence, the powerful echoes of the applause still lingering in the air. Every eye was fixed on Tyler as he propped himself up on his hands, trying awkwardly to rise, only to falter again, his body heavy with defeat. His face was ashen, like someone abruptly awakened from the sweetest dream, forced to confront a harsh reality he'd long refused to accept, a painful awakening. Rebecca stayed where she was, her gaze steady and resolute on Tyler. There was no hatred or smug triumph in her eyes, only a calm, respectful gravity, an understanding of the very mistake he had just made, a universal human flaw. At last, Tyler managed to pull himself upright, though his legs shook visibly and his eyes stared blankly at the familiar faces he'd once dismissed or looked down upon. Those same people now regarded him with a mix of shock, disappointment, and a nascent pity. Rebecca stepped forward a little, keeping just enough distance, maintaining a boundary. Then she spoke, her voice calm yet firm, loud enough for everyone to hear, each word weighted with meaning. "Tyler, what you've just experienced is a lesson you must never forget. Never underestimate anyone because of their appearance or the color of their skin." Her words were like a precise, surgical cut, not meant to wound, but to awaken a deep, painful realization within him, to sever his prejudiced beliefs. They reverberated through the dojo and echoed in every mind, freezing the room once more in collective contemplation. A few students, especially those of color who'd long endured Tyler's bias, began to applaud tentatively at first, then with growing confidence, a wave of defiant support. Their applause swelled into a thunderous ovation, a resounding endorsement of Rebecca's message and a firm, undeniable rebuke of Tyler's arrogance and prejudice. Tyler stood paralyzed amid the applause, unable to believe what he was seeing and hearing, the world turning upside down. For the first time, he truly understood what it felt like to be on the receiving end of ridicule and scorn, the bitter, humiliating feeling he had once inflicted so casually on others. Maya stood beside her mother, pride and profound emotion shining in her eyes. Tears slipped down her cheeks, no longer tears of fear or embarrassment, but tears of unwavering confidence and boundless pride in her mother's incredible strength and integrity. Tyler tried to speak, to offer some explanation, but his words caught in his throat, a painful constriction. His customary arrogance and certainty were completely gone, replaced by a raw vulnerability he could not disguise, laid bare before everyone. I didn't mean to," he stammered, a weak, pathetic defense that even he knew was meaningless now, hollow words. Rebecca looked directly into his eyes, her tone gentler but still earnest, full of compassion and a quiet challenge. "Tyler, no one is born perfect, but everyone deserves respect and fair treatment. Your strength, your skill, none of it matters if it isn't accompanied by humility and respect for others." Her heartfelt words, delivered without judgment, compelled him to lower his gaze in shame, a silent admission of guilt. There was no escape from the truth he'd long avoided. He had been wrong, utterly, unforgivably wrong. The dojo's atmosphere lightened, the heavy tension dissolving into something softer, more hopeful, now that Tyler had faced his crushing defeat and embraced a painful truth. Some parents and students who'd stood back, observers in the drama, now moved closer, their expressions softer, offering him the chance to learn and make amends, a path to redemption. Rebecca sensed the shift and felt grateful, for sometimes a small match like this can teach more than 1,000 lectures, more than years of theory. To her, today's fight wasn't about proving who was stronger. It was about delivering a powerful message: equality, self-respect, and fundamental human dignity. Finally, Tyler lifted his head. His eyes no longer held challenge or spite, but were clouded with genuine remorse and deep embarrassment. He met Rebecca's gaze, and with great effort, found the words he needed to say, words that seemed to be torn from his very soul. "Miss Johnson, I'm sorry." Silence fell again, this time warm and forgiving, a different kind of quiet. Everyone present, including those Tyler had mistreated for so long, felt the profound sincerity in his apology, a moment of true contrition. Rebecca nodded gently and offered him a meaningful, compassionate smile. No further words were needed. She knew that from this moment on, Tyler had begun to learn the most important lesson of his life, one about humility, fairness, and the true power of a heart that respects and cares for others. In the gentle hush that followed Tyler's heartfelt apology, Maya's trembling, emotional voice suddenly rang out, cutting through the quiet, drawing everyone's attention in the dojo. "Mom, you are the silent storm." Her voice, brimming with uncontainable pride, quivered with pure emotion as she declared, "Rebecca Johnson, 3-time MMA world champion." Every pair of eyes snapped to the little girl, incredulous astonishment written on every face. No one, not even Tyler, could have imagined that Maya's declaration was true, that the quiet woman before them held such a legendary past. For a moment, silence fell again, a deeper, more profound quiet, and then a ripple of whispers, stunned curiosity, and sheer wonder spread like wildfire among the students and parents. A few people hurriedly pulled out their phones, fingers shaking with excitement and disbelief as they searched Rebecca Johnson's silent storm online, desperate to confirm what Maya had just revealed. Within seconds, gasps and murmurings of amazement filled the dojo as old news articles and famous fight videos popped up on their screens. There she was, unmistakable, Rebecca hoisting her championship belt, her icy, commanding gaze piercing through the grainy images, the same gaze they had just witnessed. All doubt vanished at once, replaced by undeniable proof. A young male student, eyes wide in utter disbelief, whispered loudly enough for those around him to hear, "Oh my gosh, she really is the legendary Silent Storm. I can't believe we've been standing next to an MMA champion this whole time and had no idea." The skeptical, condescending, or pitying looks they'd once cast toward Rebecca, now transformed into expressions of deep respect and awe, a profound reevaluation. Even parents who had initially been indifferent or who had quietly applauded Tyler's arrogance bowed their heads in silent acknowledgement of their grave mistake in judging someone by appearance or skin color, a collective moment of shame and realization. In a corner, Marissa Jackson's mom watched Rebecca with tears of pride and gratitude welling in her eyes, overflowing. She wiped them away, feeling as though a long-worn burden of injustice had finally been lifted, a quiet victory for all. Tyler stood frozen, head bowed, unable to meet Rebecca's gaze, completely undone. He had imagined every possible scenario for this woman, every possible outcome for the match, but never that he would be defeated, utterly undone, by the very MMA legend he'd only heard of in passing, a mythical figure brought to life. Now his arrogance and prejudice lay in ruins, shattered beyond repair, and the only thing he could do was listen and accept the harsh, undeniable lesson fate had delivered. A young student of color, who'd often been harshly criticized and singled out by Tyler, suddenly rose, excitement shining brightly in his voice as he addressed the crowd, newfound confidence radiating from him. "We actually have an MMA legend right here in this dojo. This wasn't just a match. It was the greatest lesson in self-respect and equality I've ever seen." Applause erupted once more, this time louder and more heartfelt than ever, spreading through the dojo in a wave of solidarity and shared understanding. Everyone looked at Rebecca with fresh admiration. She wasn't just the winner of a fight, a physical contest. She was the teacher of a life-changing lesson about dignity and the true measure of a person. Rebecca offered a soft, gracious smile and bowed her head in thanks to the cheering crowd, accepting their heartfelt tribute. She knew in her heart that this victory belonged not only to her, a personal triumph, but to everyone who'd ever been underestimated or treated unfairly because of their appearance or skin color. She turned to Maya, who stood tearful yet beaming with pride, her eyes shining with admiration. Rebecca stepped forward and gently embraced her daughter, holding her close, whispering in her ear, "Thank you, Maya. Thank you for giving me the strength to stand up and protect the values I believe in." Maya hugged her mother tightly, burying her face in Rebecca's shoulder, and replied, her voice thick with emotion, "You've always been the greatest hero in my heart. I'm so proud to be your daughter." Tyler quietly stepped back, moving to the edge of the room, his eyes now free of hostility and filled instead with deep shame and newfound respect, a profound shift. For the first time in his life, he truly understood the most important lesson he'd long neglected, that humility and respect for others are the truest sources of strength, the bedrock of real power. Other parents and students, no longer held back by apprehension, moved closer to Rebecca, eager to thank her personally and show their respect for the courageous, resilient woman who had profoundly changed their perspective. The dojo's atmosphere was no longer just one of awe at a champion's prowess, but of genuine empathy, understanding, and deep respect for her unwavering courage and integrity, a communal awakening. Standing amidst them, Rebecca realized that her life had turned a new page. This chapter would no longer conceal her painful past, but would offer her a chance to inspire others and spread a powerful message of self-respect, equality, and the enduring power of compassionate heart. Amidst the heartfelt applause and respectful gazes directed at Rebecca, Tyler remained frozen in a corner of the room, his eyes fixed on the floor as an intense battle of shame and regret raged inside him. After all those years reigning at the top of this dojo, a king in his domain, for the first time, Tyler truly felt the crushing loneliness and helplessness he had inflicted on so many others, the weight of his own actions. The dojo gradually quieted, everyone waiting, sensing another significant moment to see what would happen next. Then, Tyler stepped forward with heavy, deliberate footsteps, as if waging a war against his own pride, a fierce internal conflict between honor and genuine remorse. Standing before Rebecca, he finally lifted his head, looking at her with a depth of contrition no one had ever seen from him before. The usual arrogance had completely vanished, replaced by an expression of utter exhaustion and profound humiliation. He drew in a shaky breath, and his voice, trembling but loud enough for all to hear, began. "I want to say I'm truly sorry, Miss Johnson," he began, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I was wrong. I let my pride and prejudice blind me, and I treated many of you here unfairly. I never realized how deeply my actions and words could wound." He paused to steady himself, taking another ragged breath. Then his voice, thick with genuine emotion, continued. "Today, I have learned the greatest lesson, one I should have learned long ago. I used to think martial arts was all about strength and defeating others, about dominance. But I was completely mistaken. I'm truly sorry for not respecting you and so many other students, all because of my own foolish biases." His heartfelt apology stunned the dojo into absolute silence once more, a quiet born of shared understanding. Even those he had most grievously mistreated looked at him with softened eyes, recognizing in that moment that this was a sincere apology, born from the harshest, most painful lesson of his life. Rebecca regarded him with calm compassion, her gaze understanding. She nodded gently and replied, her voice soft but firm, "I accept your apology, Tyler. None of us is perfect, but what matters most is recognizing our mistakes and having the courage to correct them." Turning toward the entire dojo, her voice clear yet gentle, carrying to every corner of the room, she spoke with profound wisdom. "I want all of you to remember that martial arts is never about defeating or belittling others. True martial arts fosters respect, humility, and inner strength. We train not to prove who is more powerful, but to learn self-control, preserve our dignity, and remain calm even in the face of challenge or injustice." She let her words sink in, looking around the room as she emphasized each point, her gaze sweeping over the faces before her. Most importantly, remember that no one has the right to judge or demean another based on appearance, skin color, or background. Martial arts teaches that every person deserves respect and fair treatment. Her powerful message resonated through the dojo, touching every heart present, inspiring contemplation. Students and parents stood in thoughtful silence, absorbing the profound lesson they had witnessed firsthand, a living, breathing example. A few younger students bowed their heads, tears in their eyes as they reflected on times they'd faced injustice or had themselves judged others unfairly. A quiet moment of introspection. Parents who once looked on indifferently or even condoned discrimination now exchanged glances of shame and newfound empathy. Their perspectives irrevocably changed. Marissa quietly stepped forward, a testament to her forgiveness, and placed her hand on Rebecca's shoulder, a gesture of deep gratitude. Her voice was tender yet clear enough for all to hear. "Thank you, Rebecca. Today you've given us an invaluable lesson we will never forget." A young student of color then spoke up, his voice unsteady but sincere, filled with a newfound resolve. "From today on, we will never let anyone endure injustice or prejudice again. I promise to always remember this lesson and treat everyone with genuine respect." Rebecca surveyed the upturned faces before her, her heart swelling with an indescribable emotion, a profound sense of purpose fulfilled. She knew that today's victory was far more than winning a match. It was the moment that would spark lasting positive change in the thoughts and actions of everyone in this room. Tyler remained still, listening intently to Rebecca and the other students' heartfelt words, each one a gentle yet sharp reminder of painful truths about himself. He looked up once more, meeting Rebecca's eyes, and in a steady but sincere voice, now free of arrogance, said, "Thank you, Rebecca. You didn't just beat me in the ring today. You've taught me an invaluable lesson I will carry for the rest of my life. I promise you and everyone here that I will change, and I will never again let pride or prejudice guide me." His honest words drew a strong chorus of agreement from the students and parents who applauded once more, not just for Rebecca's courage, but for Tyler's bravery in acknowledging and facing his mistakes a true sign of growth. Rebecca glanced around the dojo one last time, her heart lighter than ever. She knew that today she had fulfilled a mission even greater than any championship bout she had ever fought. She had delivered a lasting, transformative lesson in humility, respect, and true equality for all. From that day on, a wave of positive change began to ripple through every corner of Master Kim's martial arts academy. Tyler's heartfelt apology was far more than empty words. It marked a pivotal turning point that ushered in a new chapter for everyone there. Once known for his sometimes overly strict discipline and a clear, undeniable bias, Tyler completely transformed his teaching approach. He no longer judged students based on skin color or appearance. Instead, he took great care to help each person develop to the full extent of their own abilities and character, nurturing their individual potential. His attitude became openly humble and compassionate, and most importantly, he constantly reminded his students of the invaluable lesson he'd learned from Rebecca, integrating it into every aspect of his teaching. Tyler even made it a point to study the history and lived experiences of people of color, so he could better understand the injustices they endured, seeking true empathy. This not only made him more sensitive and thoughtful as an instructor, but also helped him rebuild the trust and respect he had lost in the eyes of both students and parents alike, earning back their faith. Rebecca quickly became a living symbol of inspiration, not just for her fellow students at the academy, but for the wider community as well. Whenever she arrived at the dojo with Maya by her side, she was met with deep respect, a quiet reverence, especially from the young students of color who found renewed confidence in their own potential and in the values of perseverance, courage, and fairness she embodied. Parents who had once doubted or overlooked issues of bias began having meaningful conversations with their children about the importance of respect and equality, fostering a new generation of understanding. Beyond simply changing their attitudes, they actively joined community events and initiatives aimed at fostering understanding and unity among different ethnic groups, becoming agents of change. Master Kim's Academy soon became renowned not only for its powerful martial arts techniques and championship titles, but also as a place that truly nurtures humility, mutual respect, and the intrinsic worth of every individual, a beacon of inclusivity. For many young students, particularly those of color, who once hesitated to step through its doors, the academy transformed into a second home where they felt encouraged to express themselves without fear of discrimination, a safe haven. Tyler even organized special discussion panels with Rebecca, inviting her to share her personal journey, how she overcame prejudice, and the profound lessons she learned during her legendary career. These talks drew large audiences of parents and students alike, all of whom came away with the understanding that true strength isn't about dominating others, but about treating everyone with kindness and deep respect, a message of true power. Rebecca never failed to remind everyone that the match wasn't simply about her defeating Tyler. It was about all of them overcoming their own prejudices, injustices, and flawed thinking, a collective journey. Maya, who had witnessed her mother's trials firsthand, now stood proudly beside her, actively spreading the message of equality and self-respect to her friends, becoming an advocate in her own right. That evening, as Rebecca and Maya prepared to leave the dojo after a deeply moving exchange with the students, they walked down the same hallway where the fateful match had taken place, now imbued with new meaning. Rebecca paused and glanced back at the room where it all began, a gentle smile playing on her lips, a look of profound satisfaction. "What are you thinking about, Mom?" Maya asked, squeezing her mother's hand, her voice soft with curiosity. Rebecca smoothed back her daughter's hair, her eyes tender yet filled with deep meaning. "I'm thinking that everything we do, every fight we face, matters less than how we treat one another, sweetheart. True strength isn't about showing off. It lives in our hearts and in how we treat each other. Always remember that." Maya looked into her mother's eyes and nodded, her voice full of emotion, a heartfelt promise. "I promise I'll always remember, Mom, and I'll do my best to be as strong as you." Rebecca embraced Maya, feeling the warmth and power of her daughter's love, a bond unbreakable. Together, they stepped out of the dojo under the soft glow of the setting sun, each step infused with confidence and pride, as they headed toward a future where they would continue to share messages of equality and courage with everyone they encountered, leaving a legacy of change. As the two of them disappeared down the path, their figures fading into the twilight, Tyler remained at the dojo's entrance, quietly watching their figures fade away. A new emotion stirred within him, unfamiliar yet profoundly welcome. No longer shame or resentment, but genuine gratitude. He knew that, painful though that match had been, it was precisely what saved him from his own arrogance and prejudice, helping him become a better person, a more complete human being. The last rays of sunlight streamed through the dojo windows, illuminating the now quiet room and reminding everyone of a lesson more precious than any victory, more valuable than any championship title. True strength isn't measured by how we showcase ourselves, but by the kindness in our hearts and the way we treat one another. The story of Rebecca Johnson isn't just an ordinary martial arts match. It's a priceless lesson in humility, respect, and the true power of the heart. Have you ever witnessed or experienced a similar situation where your initial prejudices were completely overturned once the truth came to light? Share your story in the comments below. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like the video and share it with your friends and family to help spread this powerful message. And be sure to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any more inspiring stories coming your way. Thank you for joining us.